Hey guys, I'm Sai and welcome to Ace Podcast Nation. This is episode number 14 of the Danny Batten MMA show. Here at Ace Podcast Nation, we've got all sorts of shows on all sorts of subjects, from MMA to films and TV to wrestling to boxing, films, TV. I've just repeated myself, loads of stuff, anything you could think of. We have a live show, football every Monday, 7:30. It's live on Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope now. We also have shows unscripted and uncensored, where you, the people, decide the questions and the talking points for the guests. We've had all sorts of guests on there, from UFC fighters to Cage Warriors fighters to footballers to actors, boxers, fashion label designers, just various different people in the hands of the people. We also recently dropped a new series which is called My Story. The first episode was with former England cricketer, a controversial man in many ways, very charismatic and very enjoyable to speak to, Chris Lewis. Episode 2 was former Wales international footballer, Cardiff City footballer, former Arsenal footballer, Rhys Weston, which was a fantastic show. Rhys was a very funny guy, and it was really interesting to hear some of the stories that he came out with, especially some about his when on Wales duty, and featuring casinos and bars and all sorts of things. Very interesting. And episode number 3, which is going to drop, this is out Wednesday, so today is Wednesday. Welcome. And this on Sunday, we will have My Story episode number 3 with former WBO world champion boxer, Welsh icon, Mr. Robbie Regan, which was a really, really interesting show. And that, my friends, is an exceptional boxer in his time. And as I say, a world champion. But today we are talking MMA, no boxing on today's show, because that's what the people wanted. We've while we're in a quiet period of boxing and MMA current events, we're going back and talking some old events. So we're currently going through the UFCs. We're on UFC 2 this week, and then each week we'll asking you, the people, to send in the classic MMA or boxing bouts for us to also talk. This week we are talking Royler Gracie versus I'm going to make sure I pronounce his first name right. I do apologize. I haven't got his first name there. I think it's Kakat. I'm not even going to try. It's Royler Gracie versus Sakuraba from Pride 8, which was a very, very interesting fight. And then we're going to go on to UFC number 2, which, even though they were 6 months apart from UFC number 1, there was a big difference in the standard of competitors, which we'll discuss. And these are just incredible to watch compared to today's mixed martial arts. Not just the technique and the quality difference, but things like groin strikes and hair pulling and kicks and knees on the ground and other such things. No referee stoppages at this point. So it's basically till to the death almost, in metaphorically speaking. It's quite brutal at times, but it's you can't take your eyes off it for a second, I've got to say. And joining me to talk all of this and more is former Cage Warriors champion, British MMA legend, Mr. Danny Batten. Welcome, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm really relishing and enjoying these retro moments.
I know. You got like a twinkle in your eye watching all these old, especially with the ROYCE Gracie dominating last week's tournament.
Yeah.
It was like Christmas for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so we're going to get into the Royler Gracie versus Sakuraba match from Pride 8 first. But just before we do that, I'd just like to say thank you to the sponsor of today's show and ongoing sponsor of the channel. It's Away Day Apparel. Away Day Apparel is a group of casually obsessed football fans who are looking to bring something different to the wardrobe of like-minded people. They are really starting to make their mark on the casual scene, and the terraces everywhere. They've got some really, really exciting things happening in 2020, and then not even a global pandemic is going to slow those plans down. They've got new stuff all the time. They've just released new T-shirts, and I highly recommend checking them out. If you go to their website, awaydayapparel.co.uk, you'll see all their stuff. You can give them a follow on Twitter at awaydayapparel or Instagram at awayday_apparel. And especially for viewers and listeners of the Ace Podcast Nation, if you use the code AA Podcast Nation, all in lowercase, you can get 10% off all orders. 10%. AA Podcast Nation, all in lowercase. And we thank them and Alan for sponsoring the show and their ongoing support. They've been a massive help to me personally, and as a channel, helping us secure guests and just generally supporting us as we continue to try and grow our different shows and series. And speaking of that, I'd also like to say thank you to everyone who downloaded or viewed last week's show. Last week's Danny Batten show was the most downloaded Danny Batten show of all time, other than Danny Batten's Unscripted and Uncensored, which is still like miles ahead because that was ridiculous. It was just ridiculous. I'm sure Danny just downloaded it like 1,000 times himself just to watch it.
That's what it was.
That's what it was. But yeah. So how's your week been, mate?
Yeah, good. I mean, I've still been effectively going to work in terms of staying overnight at the gym, make sure no one goes in and takes anything. Some gyms in our area have been broken into. So yeah, and I'm able to get some bits done while I'm in there. Obviously, I'm there on my own. So I'm staying with the government guidelines. So it's just very much home life. At work on my own for a good number of hours, and back home again, and just trying to entertain myself and sort of keep myself fit. I did take myself on my, one fitness run a day that you're allowed. I actually took myself out on a bike rather than a run, but so that was kind of nice to get out now the weather's warming up. Yeah, it's a good week all in all.
Yeah, I think it's. I think I've said this till I'm blue in the face. Like last weekend, I was struggling a little bit, and from about Monday onwards, I felt a lot better. And this week, I've been okay. Just it's difficult, isn't it? Like my kids, I think they found it a bit harder this week. I think, particularly the last couple of days.
Yeah.
Especially the ones who play football. The two boys who play football, it's starting to hit them that they haven't played. Like I think initially that week or two off from football because they play so much was probably like a bit of a nice break. But like now they're starting to, I think it's starting to get a bit irritating for him, especially like the older one is 15. He's doing GCSE PE and he's doing BTEC sport at the same time. He does academy football and he's very, very fit and active, and he's got ADHD, which means he is so used to doing like almost so much exercise till he can't, till he's just got to go to sleep.
Right.
That he's just used to being so active. So I think he's finding it difficult. He's trying very hard to occupy his time and not get frustrated, but it's difficult, isn't it? And plus it doesn't help. He hasn't seen his girlfriend for about a month, which I think, it's his own set of problems as a 15-year-old, but there we go. But yeah, other than that, it is what it is. What does really to turn a phrase from Andy Campbell, really boil my piss, is when I see pictures of thousands of people in parks having picnics and barbecues. That really, really pisses me off because like I'm thinking, well, I'm sat at home with my wife, my 3 kids and my dog. They'd all love to go to the park for a barbecue. Do you know what my kids would give to go and run around in a field, kick a ball around and stuff? But we're not, because that's the recommended stuff. They're saying stay home unless you have to go and get shopping or pharmacy, and if you can work from home. If you're not a key worker, and it's like, come on. And these people who are not sticking to it, they're the ones who are going to mean that eventually the military will be on the street enforcing it, and then they'll probably be the same moaning about that.
That's the thing, really. And then there'll be even more uproar because there'll be obviously anger in having military involved or the police throwing their weight around even more. But what can you do if the people ain't doing what needs to be done to try to eradicate the issue to hand? Something's got to be stepped up. But it is really frustrating because no one's going to get back to work. And at the end of the day, what's happening to the economy, the people are going to have to pay for in the long run. So, they might see it as all fun and games being off work at the minute, but it ain't going to be good.
Yeah, and those mortgage holidays and interest holidays and all these nice things that these banks and companies are doing now, they ain't going to last forever.
No, they're not.
They might do it for a couple of months, but they ain't going to do it indefinitely until everything goes back to normal. And ultimately, the more people stick to the guidelines and stay home, the quicker it will be over.
Yeah.
As frustrating as it can be, that's just the way it is. But anyway, let's take our mind off the madness that is 2020 and the world. So the fight of the week for us was Royler Gracie versus Sakuraba from Pride 8, which was very, very interesting fight. And I had not seen this fight before. I know the story, and I knew the story of the Gracies versus Sakuraba and Takada, and the kind of ongoing almost feud between Hickson Gracie and ROYCE Gracie and Royler Gracie and Sakuraba. They had this big kind of feud, which obviously the Sakuraba went by the nickname the Gracie Hunter eventually. Actually, after this fight. But it was fascinating to watch this fight for the first time because it didn't go like I thought it was going to go. The first minute did. I was like, oh, he's going to do it. This is going to be the same as UFC 1 was last week, where the ROYCE Gracie was just taking people to the ground, and then it's game. Once that's the case, once he's got you in his arms, it's kind of like game over. But that didn't happen here.
No, I mean, there's a few, additional reasons why it was different from the early UFCs with the Gracies getting it to the ground. One is, Sakuraba's clearly good on the ground. He can, handle himself against, pretty much all levels in ground situations. And also is a pretty efficient, aggressive, creative striker as well. And then to top it all off, he's got a considerable weight advantage as well and height advantage over Royler. And I think all these things just become too much. This is 7 years after UFC kickstarted. So, it's had 7 years of evolution. You were saying how you felt that there was a considerable difference between UFC 1 and UFC 2, which was a matter of months. Well, this is 7 years of evolution. And Sakuraba was the best of that evolution at the time. And giving away that weight advantage, giving away skill set advantage was just steps too much. I remember watching this, when it happened. And I was still a little bit in the delusion of the Gracies were always going to win no matter what, but I think this is a wake up call.
I think they were as well, in fairness.
I think a lot of people was, but I think this was the first realization that, hey, weight really does matter, and being well rounded absolutely matters. The problem Royler had in this fight was that he was smaller, weaker. Yes, okay, he could probably match Sakuraba on the ground in some sorts, but he doesn't have the wrestling capabilities to get him there in a positive position. He was unable to enter in and get Sakuraba on his back and actually pressurize the pace and situation to open up opportunities. He looked out of his depth. It was a very uncomfortable fight to watch. I really felt for Royler. It was just a really horrible experience for him. It looked brutal.
There was points in the fight which were quite uncomfortable to watch. So I was going to ask you, a friend of the show, Johnny Wishbone asked, do you rate Sakuraba as one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time?
I mean, what you have to do is you have to do it from era to era and how they was dominant and for the time that they were their most effective. And I think for the fact of he was so creative with the way that he struck, and particularly with the way that he did the submissions. I mean, he was catching people in submissions from the feet by giving up his back standing, which is really creative and really unusual. You know, for that aspect, really, at the time, for his era, yeah, he was one of the greatest that's been. He just brought so much attention, and you really did believe that he was unbeatable. You know, for a set period, as you do with fighters. Yeah, I really enjoyed watching him.
Do you think he was one of the first kind of all-rounded MMA fighters, whereby he could do a bit of grappling, his striking was obviously his strength?
No, there was well-rounded fighters, you know, at this time and years before as well. There have been well-rounded fighters, but I think he was the first well-rounded fighter that was thinking out of the box of his approach to go about his submissions, and thinking out of the box for his approach to do takedowns, out the box for his striking, and also out the box in terms of switching it up for striking into the ground, you know, or into the wrestling. He just was doing things that people didn't expect, and I think that's why he was a puzzle that took a little longer to figure out. Yeah, he was just so great to watch. I really enjoyed all these fights that he did with the Gracies, and not just the Gracies as well. He had great fights with Vanderlei Silva as well, because most of the time he was giving up weight to opponents. Quite often he was the smaller man. He really was a warrior in every sense of the word. But in this case, which was an unusual situation for him, he's actually fighting someone smaller than him. It was almost like I got a sense that Sakuraba was almost playing with Royler a little bit.
It was almost I think so.
Yeah, it was like he knew he could put his foot down and get this out of the way. But he respected Royler enough to know, look, if he opens up too much, he could open himself up for a bit of trouble. So he certainly weren't rushing. He had a lot of time on the clock. And he wasn't taking in any chances. But, you know, it's not one of those fights that I would enjoy watching back time and time again, because once you watched it a couple of times, you kind of know there's long periods of the same going on. You know, but like we say, you've got what you got in front of you. It was interesting to see his approach. He just stayed out of Royler's main game set, which is the ground. You know, Royler had to shoot in. We knew he was going to have to shoot in. He couldn't stand and strike with a bigger man, a more skillful man. But Royler's wrestling really wasn't up to much. And you saw him sitting into a one hooks guard, first of all. And you know, Sakuraba was choosing to have both hands out to create base. I had this very similar situation against Augusta Frota, where he's using 1 and 2 hooks guard on me, and one of the things that, you know, I've known to do is to hold round one of the hooks that the guy has on your legs. You hold round with your arm, and then you can strike with the other arm. And what that does is, instead of putting your hand down as base, which enables him to lift your hips up, which makes a hooks guard potentially dangerous, if you hold behind the knee, it helps sit your bum on your heels, and it helps anchor your hips. So it just gives you base and balance. And with the other arm, because you're not having to post it down, because you're not having your hips lifted, you're able to strike with the other hand. It did surprise me that Sakuraba wasn't choosing to do that. But I think it's because they weren't 5-minute rounds, they were 15-minute rounds. So he knew he had time. I think he was just feeling out what kind of strength Royler had. I think that's why perhaps he was choosing to do that. But Royler was never looking like he was going to sweep him, which is one of the main threats from a hooks guard situation. He just played it really, really safe down there. And when he got to the feet, we started to see a real pattern, a real main theme of the fight, which was Royler's undoing. Regards getting behind in the fight, and that was being kicked at the legs. He was sat in a butt scoop position for much of the rounds, trying to utilize some kicks to the legs of Sakuraba. But of course, you know, if you're on your ground, you're not going to have much in terms of consequence, you know, kicking up at a guy unless you can get access to his head, which Sakuraba was way too savvy for. and you just saw these brutal leg kicks going in. They were landing on the thigh, landing on the shin, and a couple of times you see Royler wincing. Clearly they were troubling him, but respects to Royler. He really toughed it out. He never looked like he was going to turn and run from the situation. He was sucking it up.
I think he thought he could still win, and that's the that's the thing with the Gracies is you do feel that even with all the damage he took to those legs in those 15-minute rounds, where his legs inside and out were just bruised and cut, he still felt that if he could get a hold of him, he could tap him out, quite quickly. But what kind of I found a little bit eye-opening is, like I said, you had that first minute where Gracie did get a hold of him and got him to the floor, but Sakuraba used his strength to get up. And then after that, he never got really a hold of him again. And when he was in this butt scoop position and Sakuraba was, really taking his time, picking his kicks, connecting, it's the first time I've ever seen an MMA fighter react so animated to a strike, whereby a couple of them, where he got caught on the shin or the inside of the knee, he was like grabbing it in pain. Like you don't see that because fighters don't want to show, as you know, obviously, like fighters don't want to show that something's hurt them because it gives your opponent a target to go after more. But that was noticeable, and obviously as the first round went on, and in the second round, Royler Gracie even resorted to trying to goad Sakuraba into coming down to him.
Yeah, that's right. He was talking in there.
He was trying to get, he was trying to irritate him to make him, because I think I would assume you'd agree, but in my opinion, all fighters have got a certain level of ego, and sometimes they fall into that trap of trying to match their opponent with what suits them to prove. Whether, if I'm a jiu-jitsu guy and the other guy's a striker and he says, oh, you'll never beat me striking, they often will try and, instead of playing, doing their strengths, they'll try and outstrike them and they get caught, or, or vice versa. But Sakuraba was having none of it. He just destroyed his legs. But then to be fair to him, as soon as that buzzer went for the end of the round, up he got, walked to his corner, didn't show it.
Quite impressed that he wasn't limping at all. And you got to bear in mind as well, that these guys clearly don't strike any. Don't train any striking in any major way. No. So conditioning the legs and things like that, I'd be very surprised if any of that went on in his training camp. So respect to him. He did suck it up and walk it off quite well. I've got to say, when he went back to that corner. But towards the end of that round, you started seeing Sakuraba getting more and more confident, trying to hunt for that head kick. So with a grounded situation where you've got one person stood up and one person down, you've got two ways to play it. And the way Royler was playing it, if it was going to be in the modern game and you're sat on your bum with your back off, you're normally looking to scoot back up. Although, to be honest, even these days, a ref would halt the bout and stand the fighter up anyways.
Yeah.
But normally you would be up off your bum when the person's standing because you're trying to get back to your feet. But Royler was sort of like not wanting to get back up to his feet because he knew that wasn't going to get him anywhere.
No.
But I don't think it was doing him any favours being sat on his bum. Because if you think about it, if you're sat on your bum on a ground situation and you're trying to attack someone who's in a stood position, you want to try to open up many attacking opportunities as possible. So you would look to want to kick the legs, the body, and possibly up kick to the head. You can't do that while you're sat on your bum on the ground. You'd have to be on your back. But of course, if you're on your back, that hampers your ground game somewhat. If Sakuraba did want to engage, you're already down on your back and you've not got a loaded potential guard situation there. So he's kind of in a difficult situation. I think if he was going to choose to try to stay on the ground, I think it would have been better for him to play on his back and he would have been able to defend those leg kicks a little bit better. Because when you're on your back and someone's stood and they're kicking at your legs, really you want to be using the flat of your foot to block on the shin so it don't get access to the thigh and don't make that nasty slap noise, and certainly don't hit the outside of those shins, because that's when it starts to really hurt, as you were seeing. And also you got to think of the rule set as it was back then. You could be kicked to the head on the ground, and so again, it's a little bit of a head scratch on why he chose to butt scoop up to Sakuraba when you could potentially get
leaving
kicked
himself
in the head.
open for the head kick, wasn't he?
And you started seeing Sakuraba look for that a little bit more at the end of that first round. And I did wonder how long it would be before one connects. And it wasn't long before, my wonders come to light in that second round. Because after a little exchange on the feet where Royler was just doing what Gracies do, they try to sort of knee stomp, try to keep you away and look for the entry to try to get you to a ground situation. He was eating up some horrible, horrible leg kicks. He ends up on the ground again in that butt scoot situation, and then that head kick lands. Lucky for Royler, it was with the foot and not the outright shin, because I think this would have put an end to the fight completely, either by cut or complete knockout. But it was a foot, but it still didn't look very nice.
No, human beings cannot take head kicks. When they're on the floor like that, of any note, they just can't. But going back to something you said, which I found interesting, not the only thing I found interesting, but one of the things which I kind of picked up on, which you said about the Gracies not being conditioned to receive strikes because they don't train strikes. And as we noticed and said, with last week with UFC 1, is ROYCE Gracie won that fight, won the whole tournament without throwing a punch, standing up. He threw a couple short jabs to the ribs during the grapples to transition, through his through the guards and stuff like that. But it was really interesting that when that was the kind of, after watching last week, that was my first taste. Obviously, I've seen some of these before, but the first taste for me of seeing a Gracie up against someone who they couldn't get hold of and who was, a good striker. So I'm looking forward to progressing through these various.
It's certainly going to get interesting, because obviously things evolved very, very quickly between, say, UFC 1 and UFC just 6. So there was, you're already seeing much more complete, much more aware MMA that you would recognize stylistically to what you'd see today.
So just to talk about the end of this fight, really, was there anything else you wanted to touch on with it?
Not really. Royler was forced to be on his feet a whole lot more than he wanted to, and eventually Sakuraba did go to the ground with Royler and got him in a Kimura hold, and it was really hard to watch. I think it's only because Royler's not so muscled and is a slender, lightweight guy that he had the dexterity in his shoulder not for it to give away. When Sakuraba was doing that hammerlock, he got so much angle on it. He started hitting into his own leg, which stopped him sort of completing the submission. But what I understand of the Kimura is, whenever you're doing a bent arm lock, Americana or Kimura, something like that, the key angle is 90 degrees. Now, the issue you get if you increase the angle of 90 degrees is the arm begins to go straight, and that the guy starts getting some mechanical strength to straighten the arm, and obviously you're no longer in a bent arm lock. But if you start decreasing the angle less than 90 degrees, you start adding some more dexterity in the shoulder. And if you look at the way he did that technique, he started to decrease the angle, which means he had to take the arm all the way up to the back of Royler's head, when really, if he wanted to get that completion, he should have just peeled his back off the mat and just pushed the wrist away from his back and not up towards the back of the head where it decreased the 90-degree angle. He should have maintained strict 90-degree angle and just pushed that wrist away from his back. And well, then he would have broke his shoulder and elbow. He would have wrecked the arm. So why he didn't do that, I don't know. I don't know whether perhaps submissions back then perhaps weren't so as polished as they are today. But I do feel like he could have put him away, but the ref stepped in and intervened. I think the ref saw enough and felt like Royler wasn't going to stop until major physical trauma. Was he right to stop it? Because Royler jumps up and clearly he was comfortable enough there. He jumps up and there was nothing wrong with his arm or shoulder, which is just shocking to me because, it was really, really ugly looking. It was really bent in a nasty angle.
It wasn't pleasant. I guess as a referee, like, do you wait for the arm to break, or do you have to save the fighter?
These days, pro athletes or referees will let it go. I think, once there's a break in any action,
a lot of fighters will refuse to tap, won't they? And they'll go unconscious, or they'll break.
Yeah, but initially, a referee will let the break happen, then intervene. But they will leave it up to you whether you decide to take it that far. That's the consensus, and refs will tell you that in the back room. They will leave it up to you. Obviously, with chokes,
it's got to be traumatic for fighters. I don't care what anyone says. How I know fighters are a different breed, and they're they're killing machines in a lot of cases. That's got to be traumatic for the person whose arm is broken or leg is broken or whatever, ankle's broken, to have it broken by someone in a hold. Know it's coming, and for it to happen, you're aware this is what's going to happen. But equally, I think it's got to mess with the head of the person who's doing it, because in their head they've got to be thinking, just tap, just tap, just tap, just tap, and then it goes in your hands. It can't be nice.
I know. You get different characters, don't you? You get some people quite narcissistic who would think nothing of it to break your arm, to put you asleep, and hold it on. Even if the ref misses it, he's going to hold it on. You're going to get fighters that are like that, but then you're going to get some that are not quite so brutal in their approach, and they see it more of a sport, and they're willing to take it as far as a break, and they will let go of the submission and transition to something else. I mean, I was never one for.
Where were you in those two sort of sides of the spectrum?
I was always really quite stubborn. And when I say stubborn to the strikes, I wouldn't give in to the pain of being struck, if you will. But if I knew something was going to be consequential to my longevity as a functioning human, I would tap. I got submitted just once in my fight career in Japan. It's what led me to start training jiu-jitsu. It was when I fought him in an area. I got submitted really, really quick. I was really out of my depth on the ground. I was pretty much just a striker predominantly at the time. And I felt my arm go out, and I could have put up with it and let damage go to my arm, but I never saw the fights as fights. I saw it as a sport. It's as closely related to a street confrontation as you can get, and that's initially why I did it. And originally I was only going to fight a couple of times just to test the skills I'd acquired in martial arts. So I never thought at that time that I'd really go through with being a fighter, although it's something I fantasized about as a young teenager. I really wasn't sure. I thought, I just want to test myself and see how it goes. But then I really got hit with the bug, and it went on from there. So I would tap. Simple as that. I'm actually watching the submission now. I mean, it's just so awful looking. It's really horrible.
It's not nice.
How he jumped up and everything was fine. I mean, there was no injury there at all. He put his arms up and he was completely fine. But I think the ref was still correct to stop it. It goes to show the ref was
around this time.
This a ridiculous injury.
Around this time, this is where they started to give referees more power in terms of protecting fighters and actually stopping fights. Because I only know this because I was reading about it earlier. Obviously, in the early UFCs 1, 2, 3, I think the referees were basically told just leave it, and we saw that with the sumo wrestler last week, where he had his teeth knocked out when he was on the floor and he was unconscious, and they just let it go, and it was his corner which kind of got in the ring. Whereas eventually, like these days, I came across a video earlier where it was at an amateur event in the UK. These two young guys were fighting, and the guy knocks the guy down. He beats him with strikes. He knocks him out, but he just the ref stops it, but he has him in the ground and pound, and he just keeps pounding on the guy as he's like semi-conscious, and the referee's like in between him trying to push him off. He won't stop striking him, so the referee puts the fighter on top in a rear naked choke to as soon as the referee does that, he stops. But the referees, I think, they train in it themselves to so they know what they're looking for in terms of submission positions and stuff like that. But I do think it's important that a referee can do something like that if needs be to defuse a situation or to stop a fighter after the fight is finished.
Yeah, I've had a couple of
seen over the years a couple of times.
Yeah, I've had a couple of really strange experiences being a referee for matches, and one of them was I was cornering for a amateur match where, when I think it was their first fight each that they were having. Both had big crowds of people there. You could see the nerves and tensions running through them, and they both come out absolutely going crazy on each other. And one guy got the other down into a mounted position. Both of them wasn't very proficient on the ground. So you had one raining down punches, literally just giving everything he's got, really rushing it, and it was all over the place. Really not technical at all. But the guy on top ended up busting such a nut. He passed out in mount position and collapsed on top of the guy he had mounted. And that was a really unusual situation for a ref because I didn't know what the hell was going on. I'm like, what's going on? He's passed out. And it was a crazy situation. And one other situation I had, which was totally nuts, was we was having trouble shutting the cage door. It weren't always slamming shut. The padding was getting in the way. Sometimes it was shut okay, sometimes it weren't. And in between rounds, I had to go to the cage to help pull the cage door shut. And as I went to pull it, the two guys started fighting behind my back. It was an absolute surreal situation. Jesus. Absolute surreal. So I had to tell them both off, reset and restart the timer. So I've had a couple of strange circumstances as a referee. I do feel for them as well. Referee's position is quite pressure orientated because you've got to make a decision then and now, and you've got to stick by it as well. You can't stop a fight and then say, okay, oh no, I got it wrong, start again. You've got to stick by it and just swallow the pill that you may have stopped it earlier, may have stopped it late. You just have to suck it up and learn by it and hope you evolve as a referee.
Yeah, and they're always wrong in the eyes of of whoever, either fighter or the media, but they've got to make split-second decisions, and they're you'd like to think that they're always thinking of the fighter's safety and health as well.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, we're going to go on to UFC 2 now, and this was the first time Big John McCarthy was involved in MMA professionally, or the UFC at least. And obviously he became one of the most influential mixed martial art referees in the world. He designed the rules for the UFC, and he's heavily involved in Bellator now, making them more trying to take them to the level of the UFC. I think he's an excellent pundit as well, I got to say.
Right.
But yeah, it's very, very interesting to see him as a young man in his first experience. And actually, what you could see from it was he was very. There was a couple of fights where you could see he felt like he should get between the fighters to stop it, but actually all they'd been told to do was just put their arm away and say, the fight's over. So it's interesting, not just watching the standard and the techniques and the fights and the weight division, the lack of weight divisions, but it's also interesting watching the referee, the rules and the way the referees interact change.
Sure.
It'll be really interesting as we get through these over the coming months to see that. Okay, so we have. I'm just going to bring up UFC number 2. Overall thoughts of the general program.
Yeah, I think the initial thoughts was that the strikers were now aware of what the ground aspects were about, and they started to make adjustments to try to put it in their game, not put it in their game where they're going to start shooting and taking someone down and putting they're still very much strikers, but they got a little awarenesses. So if there's a head there, they know how to squeeze it in a roundabout right way, and they had a little bit more balance about them. Yeah, and when someone's trying to engage and take them down, they had a little bit better balance. Whereas, in UFC 1, when Royce was shooting in, they were falling to their back. They had no sense of
clueless,
sprawl.
weren't they?
Yeah, no sense of base. They got taken down very, very easily. In this, they were hopping around a little bit more. They had a little bit more awareness about them. Not in every case, in every fight, but certainly, people like Patrick Smith who had fought in the previous UFC.
Is that the boxer? There was one who had fought in the previous one.
That's right, Patrick Smith.
Yeah,
and Rhodes. They both had fought.
Yeah, and he had obviously he was a very good boxer, but he had gone away and learned how to defend jiu-jitsu only on a basic level. But enough that when he went to the ground, he wasn't clueless, and you could see straight away when in one of his fights, he went to the ground, and he didn't panic.
Yeah.
Which is, makes a massive difference to not just the ability to fight, but also I would imagine his confidence in fighting someone who's more jiu-jitsu based. But we went through last week all the different martial arts involved in this tournament. The ninja guy did not do well. He got through the first round, but the second round was one of the most brutal fights of the whole tournament. So we'll go through the results. I was just trying to bring up the video so I could watch the finishes as I was talking. Just so they don't show the prelims or the
they talk through them. You do see a couple of them later on. You do, don't you?
So there's basically it's a 16-man tournament. But the opening round they don't show. They just go through the results. Then they show the final match of the round, which is ROYCE Gracie versus Minoku Ichikara. So that's the first fight we see, which ROYCE Gracie wins via lapel choke at the 5-minute mark.
Was it lapel choke?
ROYCE Gracie. It says lapel choke on here, but that might be wrong.
I think he was going for an armbar, but he never even got to extend. He never even got to extend the arm.
Did he?
Yeah, but it was a very easy takedown. The Ichikara tried to throw an inside leg kick. It was out of range, so his angle of his hips turned all the way round to try to connect it. He kind of just overcommitted it. Really got himself taken down very early, got mounted very early. Fair play to him. He managed to hold on, literally hold on. He was trying to stop Royce rising up in that mounted position to rain down punches. So he showed a little resilience, but there was nothing really counter-offensive going on. Really, he was receiving body shots, some mild head shots. Just being softened up by Royce. And then there was an opportunity to try to bump Royce off. Royce never really, I think he could have just stayed in the mount position, but he transitioned and then started setting up that armbar as he tried to bridge Royce off. I think the guy knew he was out of his depth.
I was going to say, as soon as he transitioned from the choke towards the armbar, he did not even wait. Straight away, he grabbed, he just tapped before he'd even extended his arm. Which I found very interesting because tell you what was good about this show straight off in the opening scene was they had the stunt guy. And when they had the stunt guy, when he first said, this is a stunt man or whatever, he knows different. I thought, oh, Jesus, it's going to be worse than last time.
I thought exactly the same thing. He knew his stuff, didn't he?
But actually, he was very, very knowledgeable, which was, they lacked that in the first one. They lacked someone who understood grappling and jiu-jitsu and these other, anything outside of striking. They didn't have a clue, did they?
He understood. He understood about it. I just have a look there. You're saying it's a lapel choke because I haven't looked at it in terms of the results. I just watched the show and the event, and but looking it back, he was going for a lapel trick, which I knew, but I thought he let go of it and had two hands on the arm, but he doesn't. He has one. So that he was tapping because of the choke. Yeah, he only has one arm on his armbar, so it was a lapel choke, but an armbar as well that could transition to. He kind of had it all going on there.
The commentators thought it was an armbar as well, because even they said, you know, that he was very quick to tap, and I thought, because he didn't seem to have the choke right in, but obviously I'm assuming lapel choke involves the gi, does it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and yeah, it's not very nice having that pulled tight around your neck, especially if you don't know how to get out of it. It must be a very, very suffocating feeling, and yeah, no wonder he was tapping.
Not used to it as well. Not used to being choked.
Exactly. Like, you know, it's the same for a jiu-jitsu guy who's a ground specialist who's never done striking. When you've got someone coming at you, it ain't very nice. It makes you panic, makes you feel rushed, makes you feel under pressure. Well, just same for a striker when they're put in the ground and someone starts smothering you and all over your face and all around your neck. It's a suffocating experience.
They got their hands all over your
different
your
type of panic. So yeah, that's why he tapped so quick then.
Yes. So first bout we see is the title holder, ROYCE Gracie, and he does not take long to put away Ichikara, and that's the first bout of UFC 2. Not a great deal to that one. Like I said at the start of the show, I felt that the overall standard of fighters was better in this one. You didn't really get to see that in this particular fight.
It's a shame because I would have liked to have seen that Ichikara fight one of the other strikers. I thought that would have been quite interesting.
He was actually one of the favourites, wasn't he?
Yeah. It was a shame he got hoist so early on.
Yeah, well, I think this was actually, in terms of like the bookies, this was the two favourites. But they got drawn against each other.
Yeah.
In the first rounds, which is, you know, is such as tournament format. The next fight we see was Jason DeLuca versus that's wrong. Ignore me.
Scott Morris and Patrick Smith.
That's right. So Patrick Smith defeated Scott Morris with KO via KO elbows after 30 seconds.
Yeah. Remember I said to you, you know, I'd got this videotape out with the girlfriend in 1994 or 1995, something like that. And when I saw it, that's when I realised I think this is real, because I was thinking I was watching a film. But when I saw if you slowed it down, I remember having my videotape and rewinding it, looking back, and you actually see blood spurting out from his face with the elbow strikes. And it's just, I remember it sickened me at the time, so I'd never seen anything like it. And this was the very fight that I showed my dad, and I just said, "Dad, have a look at this. This is real." He goes, "No, it can't be, son." I said, "No, seriously, you've got to watch it." And when he saw it, he was flabbergasted and a little sickened by it as well. But yeah, I mean, Patrick Smith just looked so brutal, didn't he? He had that dominant position, and he just let it all go. Poor guy didn't stand a chance.
No, he did not. And actually, like I say, this was where you started to see the difference in the standard this year, or this tournament, compared to the first one, because I felt like outside of maybe one or two fighters in UFC 1, the overall standard, maybe it wasn't that great. And you know, what you saw in there straight away was that, right, there's a couple of fighters, strikers, grapplers outside of the Gracies who can really do something here.
But are you noticing though, in all these early UFCs, you're seeing no wrestlers come in for Hoist to go up against at this stage?
No.
I think the first few UFCs,
fighters.
Yeah, and they were definitely, you know, trying to match it so that, you know, the jiu-jitsu was showing up against the systems that were going to be, you know, easy to expose. It would have been a whole lot more difficult to expose a bigger and heavier wrestler. which we began to see in the UFCs as it progressed through. The wrestlers started showing a bit of a dominant force. The wrestlers were kind of like the stick in the spokes of a bike. They kind of like ruined all the systems in a way, wasn't it? There was really good spoilers of the ground guys, was able to do crude ground and pound and use their really good base. And of course, strikers couldn't stay on the feet with them. They're so proficient at getting it to the ground. So they're kind of like, they were sort of like, just destroying everyone to a point. And we're really showing dominant. I think it was around about UFC 7, UFC 8 and stuff like that you started seeing the wrestlers really sort of take a hold and really start to show through.
Indeed, you'll have to bear with me a second because I've just lost the page with the results on, so I cannot go through what was next. What was the next fight? Have you got that in front of you?
Yeah. Next one was at Rhodes. He had the longest fight in the preliminary fights that we didn't actually get to see.
Yeah.
He ended up having to get a stand-in fighter. Just trying to get the actual name. It was Fred somebody or other. Is it Fred Itzker or something like that? I'm trying to remember his name.
Just trying to get him up now. Sorry.
It was Fred somebody or other. It's just going to come up
so
now.
Fred Etish. So you had Johnny Rhodes defeating Fred Etish via submission. It says bulldog choke after 3 minutes. But Johnny Rhodes went 12 minutes in the first game.
That's
first
right,
match. This is David Levicki, and he beat him via submission to punches.
But
that's the longest fight of the whole tournament.
I mean, this guy, this Johnny Rhodes, looks like a halfway decent striker. He's got reasonable form, definitely got good delivery of strikes. And the guy he's up against was a really traditional karate guy. Now, Koshinkai karate guys, they really are good strikers. This guy was more traditional in his approach to the karate arts. Showed reasonable defense. I think they're just feeling each other out. Their ranges were perhaps a little bit different what they used to from each other. But Rhodes had a really good counter cross punch. Clearly understood the counter game. I think anyone that's got a counter game to their striking understands striking to a reasonable level. And he caught him. They went to the ground. Although they're both strikers, it ended up with Fred on the ground. I didn't know what he was doing down there. I mean, Johnny Rhodes didn't know what he's doing down there in the big scheme, but he was the bigger, stronger man. He kind of was punching all over the place, hitting his shoulders, hitting his back, not hitting his face. So he's wasting a lot of energy there.
Do you think he was not hitting him in the face because he was this the one where the guy was visibly hurt? No, that was a different fight.
This guy wasn't looking like he was going to be able to put up much of a fight. And Johnny Rhodes, you can tell by his character that he's not a complete brutish guy. He's not like Patrick Smith was in the previous fight. But he just overpowered the guy, really. He was just bigger. I think also you got to remember that he'd already fought quite a long time with bare knuckles, so his hands were probably bruised up and scuffed up by the time he's fought this guy. So he probably didn't want to be punching him around the skull anymore, having sore hands. But yeah, he made pretty short work of him. He kind of got him in a schoolboy headlock. Okay, they called it a bulldog choke, which is the more of a correct way of explaining it. I don't think he knew it as a bulldog choke. I think he was literally schoolboying the guy. And just got around his neck and just squeezed hard as he could. He didn't have his legs particularly well positioned to put it on correctly. He just got hold of the guy's neck and squeezed, and the other guy had no clue how to get out and got put semi-conscious, really. Ref intervened, and it was all. I think he did try to tap. Quite another short fight. But you're now seeing strikers try and do the submissions on the ground. This is how it is different from UFC 1.
Indeed. So I just go back to that Patrick Smith versus Scott Morris. Was that the first one we talked about? Those elbows to the back of the head, they would obviously not be legal in today's.
No, not now.
UFC. But they were quite brutal. Johnny Rhodes, which is the fight we were just talking about, he was the one who in the first UFC 1 looked a decent striker, but he got taken to the ground and submitted very quickly.
Yeah.
He came away, and you could see that even with this, he choked someone out. Not Johnny Rhodes.
Patrick Smith.
Patrick Smith. I'm very sorry. I'm getting the two of them mixed up. Patrick Smith had gone away and worked on that groundwork, even if only a little, and which you'll see in the next round. Johnny Rhodes as well. Johnny Rhodes is a heavyweight karate guy who, he won by a submission. So next up we had, was it Remco Pardo, the next one?
Yeah, Remco Pardo
versus Orlando
White.
This was brutal.
Yeah, it was nasty.
I mean, nasty, brutal.
Yeah. But this Orlando White, did you see the clip of his previous round? When he elbowed the back of the head and neck of the other guy that he was fighting. I mean, the guy's got some power, even though he was very small and slight. He had some nasty power on those elbows. So I remember when I was watching this, for the first time as a young teenager, I was really excited about this fight. But again, this is where size really mattered. I mean, Remco Pardo's a big guy. I think something like 6'4", wasn't he? 250 pounds, big guy. And Orlando was what I think was he billed at 170 pounds, maybe I think it was, but obviously considerably smaller. 5'10" compared to 6'4". You're giving away substantial stats. And the takedown was quite interesting because Remco Pardo has done this takedown more than once. He sort of like had the guy around his back and sort of just done an arm and elbow throw. And I know judo guys do this type of throw, but I don't know what the name of it is. You have to forgive me. But basically, he just stopped Orlando with the arm that he was controlling, just stopped him able to turn into him because he couldn't put his elbow to the mat. So he was stuck underneath Remco Pardo. He was really stuck firmly on his back. He was trying to do knees, trying to do kicks, trying to get access to Remco Pardo's head, but it wasn't happening for him. He was just looking like a small bug stuck underneath someone's army boot. And then Remco Pardo got into a position where he got enough of his body weight onto him to open up a little bit of an elbow strike. And when he landed one, he could feel that he had good leverage on it. And it went one into a handful of elbow strikes. And Orlando's head was completely pinned to the canvas. And he knocked the guy out. I think they threw the towel in as well. But it was already too late. It was completely out, unconscious. Nothing hugely technical. An interesting takedown. An interesting type of pin. And some brutal heavyweight elbows.
Yeah, and I mean, this is, like you said, where the size difference really came into play, because once he was on top of him, he literally just held his wrist. He had controlled his wrist and his elbow across his own waist.
That's right.
And then just used his massive weight difference, sat on him, held the head, did not. And I'm just watching it back now. A couple of times, Veit tries to pull away his arm, and straight away he puts the arm that he actually ends up elbowing him in the face with straight back on the elbow to hold it in place.
Yes,
he's
right.
Very conscious of that.
He knew he had control.
And then, like you said to me off air when we discussed the show, when he hits that first elbow from the top, and he realizes, oh, that's his face, and his head's against the mat. He's got nowhere to go. His arm's controlled with his with Remco's left hand holding his wrist. And he's pulled his arm across him, so he just like sat on top of him. There we go, and then it's 3, 4 real hard, quick, powerful elbows straight to the eyes.
Yeah, they were fast. I mean, Remco Pardo was quite
from
fresh.
Heavyweight to what weight Jack and Veit was?
Well, he looks like a featherweight, doesn't he? He's tiny in comparison.
What weight
I think he said 170 pounds, but it'd be lucky if he's even that much. He looked really tiny in there.
And to be fair to Remco, after he hit the third elbow and the guy was unconscious, he he did it one more, but he kind of like it was like a half-hearted sort of one, and then he holds the wrist so the guy can't hit him, and says to the referee, he's out, and then the corner throws in the towel as well, and he could have done some serious damage with those elbows. So I think he deserves a certain amount of credit for not just continuing.
You can tell he was a nice guy in the interviews afterwards. I mean, he was saying that he didn't expect to win that fight. He's just going to go into the next round and just try to win. He was it was under no illusion that he was the best there necessarily. He was just going to go in there and try and win. Absolute nice guy. He was not in it to be nice, to be nasty to anyone. He just did what needed to be done. And you're right. When he knocked him out and was aware that he had knocked the guy, he didn't want to dish out any more in punishment and look to the ref to stop it. But with that takedown, what he wanted from that takedown was a scarf hold. I think he was probably wanting to submit this guy.
So ultimately, people who don't know what that is, what's a scarf hold?
A scarf hold is where you have control with your arm around the head and around the back of the neck, and you have one arm in. It can be a really solid control. It's a little hard to do it on someone who's really proficient on the ground. They know how to scoop their hips out and make it hard for you to pin. But with the weight advantage Remco Pardell had over Orlando, had he got the scarf hold, Orlando wouldn't have been getting out of that, because that's an even more dominant position than he had there. Really, the kind of position that Remco Pardell had there against someone his same weight, he wouldn't have continued to have control. But with the weight advantage as well, it was just too much for Orlando. But I really believe he wanted the scarf hold, was unable to attain it, and really just discovered that there's an elbow shot there, and then once he found a home for it, he just kept repeating the process.
And he was knocked the F out. He was gone.
Absolutely, yeah.
So Remco, the nice guy Pardell, we'll call him from now on. He goes through to the semi-finals. Next up was ROYCE Gracie versus Jason DeLuca. Jason DeLuca, I think, fancied his chances in this fight. He did not win.
He's a young. He went on to fight in Pancras and that. He ended up fighting people like Bas Rutten and become quite a well-rounded fighter. He's more of a kung fu stylist, and if I'm not mistaken, I think there's footages of him going to the Gracie camps for the open challenges. I think he fights some of the Gracies there. Actually at the Gracie venues, there's some really grainy tape footage. You could tell he's a young lad, very fit, tenacious, but just not aware of the ground arts.
He fought in the UFC 3 times. He fought in UFC 1. He won UFC 1. He fought twice in UFC 2. Then he fought in many Pancras events. So he had a pretty not by any means a incredible career, but he had so his final record was 55 fights, 33 wins, 21 losses. It's pretty just under 50%, really, isn't it?
But
is not a terrible record, is it?
No, you got to remember a lot of those losses come when he had no ground skills whatsoever, but he ended up becoming an okay ground guy. He become an all-round fighter during his career. It's a lot of fights to have.
He was submitted 13 times in the 55, and he won 13. He won 13 by submission as well.
Right.
So he obviously went on to really improve his ground game substantially. ROYCE Gracie, I think it was an arm lock, this one, wasn't it?
It was another really nice transition from ROYCE. It was actually Jason DeLucia who threw him to the floor. They sort of I think DeLucia would have liked to have been striking. He sort of looked like he was going to do a jumping side kick, kind of got smothered. They clinched up together. Royce is not bothered whether someone wants to engage and throw him down or not. So it didn't look like he even was bothered that he got swung off balance a little bit. He didn't try to fight his base and balance and was happy to go to his back. Very quickly worked from kind of like a half guard. Started trying to work around the backside of DeLucia. You could tell DeLucia didn't really have the right idea. He didn't hold a whiz around the arm. He didn't try and set his base back, and got overturned very easily. And then saw him in a mount position. But he's young and really athletic. He was really bucking. He wasn't being a sit-in target. He was showing some fight. But as he bridged out, very similar to what happened to the Ichikaru, bridged out from the mount position, but of course exposing his arm, and the arm was on. Now the poor guy was tapping Royce a good number of times. The referee was a little unaware.
Side, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was not too on it. Then he had to tap the mat in vision of the referee. Well, I think he had his arm a little bit hyperextended by the time he stepped in. But again, this is a whole evolution process for the referees. We know Big John McCarthy is an incredible referee, one of the best there's been and is today. But he was still learning his trade probably at that point. DeLucia was holding his arm a little bit after that.
Yeah, I was going to say he's having a little hold of that.
Yeah, we're just seeing Royce again make short work of people. He's getting it to his realm very quickly, and doing what needs to be done to advance the next round with as much energy and as least amount of damage as possible. Indeed. But the final was with, oh no, it wasn't a final. It was the next semi-final, wasn't it, with Patrick Smith and Johnny Rhodes? Yeah.
So the semi-finals were Patrick Smith versus Johnny Rhodes and ROYCE Gracie versus Remco Pardol. So I think it's the Smith-Rhodes fight first.
Yeah,
if I'm correct.
I was enjoying this one because you got two obviously strong, dangerous strikers.
Yeah, and then typically the fight finishes via submission.
Yeah. Because they're becoming aware now. Yeah, it's really good. But Rhodes really impressed me with that counter crosshand again. You can tell he's got something on it, and they was exchanging some nice little leg kicks as well. It's kind of like looking a little bit like an MMA striking bout that you would see today. You started seeing, the way it was going to evolve into. But yeah, they had some nice little exchanges. No one over dominating on the other. You have to remember that Johnny Rhodes had a lot more cage time that day than Patrick Smith did. End up getting his head caught down low in a stood position, which is what we know now as a guillotine. And Patrick Smith didn't do it technically great. He didn't have to. He's a big, strong guy. Got round his head and just lifted. And Johnny Rhodes didn't really fight it. He tapped quite quickly. So yeah, Patrick Smith moved on. I mean, Patrick Smith really was running through these fights really quickly, just the same as Royce did.
Yeah, and Patrick Smith went on to have a proper mixed martial arts career.
Yeah, not hugely successful. He had a lot of losses.
But what I mean is he actually went and he fought in a couple of UFCs. He fought in UFC 6 also. He fought in Baz Rutin's invitationals.
Right.
He also was.
I think he fought Michael Ruiz as well. Michael Ruiz is one of my favourite fighters back in the day. He was, to me, one of the most complete fighters of the early period.
I did not know that he had died. He died in 2019 of cancer.
Oh, Patrick Smith. Oh, Patrick Smith did? Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay, I didn't know that. Wow.
He also went to prison for sexual assault.
Right.
But he also defeated Butterbean.
Wow, I didn't know that.
There you go.
Because Butterbean did all right in the old MMA, didn't he? Considering.
Yeah, he did. He had someone who was it telling me? Someone was telling me about Butterbean being one of the hardest punchers in combat sports ever, just in terms of power.
Yeah.
I can't remember who it was now.
He had a lot of knockouts to his name in boxing and MMA, didn't he?
Yes, he did. So then after that, the other semi-final was ROYCE Gracie versus Remco, the nice guy, Pardo,
Yeah.
who was choked out after 1 minute 31 by a lapel choke. Was this a
Yeah,
lapel choke?
yeah, I would have thought this would have gone a little bit longer. I just, yeah, but Royce did
Well,
really, really good. He shot in
they
and got back really
sorry,
early.
they with them this Remco Pardo, they were marketing him on the commentary as a jiu-jitsu guy,
Yeah.
like a heavyweight jiu-jitsu guy, but
Mm,
he seemed to know, what he was doing in terms of grappling and controlling limbs, but I didn't
mm.
feel like he was anywhere near the standard of ROYCE
No.
Gracie in terms of jiu-jitsu. Now, I know not many people are at that standard,
Yeah.
but he just didn't seem anywhere.
No.
Maybe I'm being unfair to him, but just the
Yeah.
fact that they were selling him as a jiu-jitsu guy, I expected
Yeah.
him perhaps to be a bit more accomplished.
Yeah. Yeah. I've trained both, obviously BJJ up to a black belt. But years and years before, I trained a system called Spirit of Combat Jiu-Jitsu, which is basically traditional jiu-jitsu. A little bit like how the ninjutsu was. Really, it's designed for war and like real combat, if you will. But
Yeah,
it has to be really diluted to make it, to make it work in the real westernized world. So it's really diluted down. And I progressed up and got my black belt in that as well. But what I can say about the jiu-jitsu is that it is well rounded in its practice, but it is left very much in its practice form. There's not much in the way of sparring, not much in the way of experiencing the techniques that you're learning in a live arena. So
yeah,
yeah, Remco Bardet was just a really big guy that would have had somehow a little bit of know-how about the mechanics, but no real skill in the play to play it out. So traditional jiu-jitsu guys have a little bit of striking, they have a little bit of judo because they do have complete system. So one of the things we would do is we'd drill someone coming at you with an overhand strike over a weapon or just a fist. You would block it, engage the arm, lock the body, do a judo type throw, a knee on the rib, strike to a pressure point in the neck, and maybe an armbar finish on the ground. So it was complete in its practice, but it was all drill and practice form rather than real play, real spar.
real sparring. Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm not surprised he was out of his depth on the ground.
interestingly,
Really, he only had size going in his favour.
yeah, yes, he certainly had that. He was 6'4",
Yeah,
260
and
pounds.
250 pounds. That's a
He,
big dude.
he interestingly now, I don't know. I'm assuming he didn't have this back in 1994.
Mm,
But he's got a second degree black belt in jiu-jitsu, black belt in
right,
judo, black belt in
right,
taekwondo, and fourth degree black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
right.
Now I'm assuming that he didn't have those qualifications,
No,
for the right
yeah,
terminology.
he's collected those on his journey. But after,
Since then.
I think it was after he fought Hoist that he went on to train Gracie Jiu Jitsu.
I see. Yeah.
Mm,
Okay, got you. Um, Now I'm not. I don't want to be disrespectful to him at all. He got to the semi-finals. He did very well. He was.
yeah,
He couldn't have been any more impressive in terms of what he did in the quarterfinals. He knocked his opponent clean out.
yeah,
And ROYCE Gracie is one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time. He
yeah.
changed the game, for
Mm,
everyone, and not many people came even close to beating him, let alone
mm.
beat him. So it's no shame in
No,
losing to
he
him.
was
Um,
massively dominant.
what I find very, very interesting about these lapel chokes is to the viewers, they just look like nothing.
Oh no, they're not
But
nice.
you could tell by the look on his face, the
Mm,
panic on his face, that is a frightening experience. But it looks
yeah,
like
yeah,
he's just, basically just doing that.
yeah. No, it's not
But
nice. Trust me. It's
it's no way. Oh, I believe you, 100%.
yeah. You got to remember back in the day, you used to be executed with a noose around your neck. These geese, they have a little bit of tubing. Um, sometimes it's like a rope that's inside the lapel. Sometimes it's a rubber tubing. But someone who knows how to do a choke, they would turn that out and dig it clean into the neck. It's just, once it's bed in, you don't have a lot of chance to resist it. You're either going to go asleep or you have to tap. You have two very, very short, fast choices to make.
Is there any ways?
Nice.
How would you teach a student to reverse it or get out of it?
Yeah, I mean, always, always the thing with any submission, not just lapel chokes, it's always antidote rather than cure. To cure yourself of an issue, you have to be going through some form of experience of it before you get better. So it's a little bit like, if I start getting the symptoms of a cold into flu and I go to doctors to get antibiotics, well, I'm already going through the process of feeling sick. It just might make me get over it a little quicker. So, if you are into deep water of a submission, there are things you could do to resist and, that you can wiggle out of it. But really, the ultimate thing is to know how to detect the preparation for a submission, whatever that may be. I always say about there's 5 key elements to any sweep, strike, or throw that you need to do. So really, you want to try to detect it in its first and second implication. So once they start grabbing the gi and then grabbing the other side of your collar, you're now 2 stages in to a potential 5 to complete the choke. You really want to start defending it at that point. But there are things you can do when you're, say, at stage 4 and 5 of the choke coming in. And one of those things is, if your lapel, I'm sort of demonstrating here, but if your lapel gets pulled across your neck, like so, one of the things you can do is put both hands on the lower part and pull down so it's not cutting across the whole of the neck, and try and allow some blood flow and oxygen still to go to your head. That is a survival technique. That's defending it at that stage 5. So it is possible. I mean, without getting on the mat and me demonstrating it with an opponent, I can't really explain it. But certainly people who have some kind of know-how in the grappling arts will know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, when I come up to Northampton to see you all, maybe we could film a couple of demonstrations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that'd be great. Cool.
Because when I come up, I'm gonna hopefully do a show in person with you, and hopefully get a couple of video interviews, maybe with some fighters and some people around your area. If there's a couple of footballers I'm hoping to meet up with, like on my travels, get some content, and maybe we'll film a couple of those demonstration videos, because I think they're interesting to have, like when we're breaking down different aspects of the fights. Or I say when you're breaking them down. If I can refer people to, like, we've got a 2-minute video or a 5-minute video on the YouTube channel which says, and Danny shows you, what to do from this or how to do this.
Sure. And don't be so hard on yourself. You actually do a good job of breaking it down. I've noticed each week you're becoming more aware of what's going on, and you're doing a good job yourself.
As my wife says, you watch enough of the bloody stuff, so you should be able to talk about it. So
yeah, you're doing good.
I feel like I can hold a conversation about it and I can talk about it, and if I'm not sure of something, I'll kind of defer it to you. Like, I'm a bit more confident in my technical analysis of boxing or striking than I am, grappling and stuff like that.
Sure.
I'm with grappling, I'm aware of perhaps what some of the moves are and the submissions are and holds are, but maybe not necessarily like the technical side of it, like how to put them on or how to get out of them and that sort of thing. And again, like, I'm not a professional fighter. I'm not a retired professional fighter. So that's what you're here for.
Yeah. No, I think it works good. We both get your perspective of things. How you sort of see things, being a fan of it, and then you can obviously get mine. Which, just because I've got a lot more experience in it doesn't mean to say I'm always right. You'll always get people differing opinions of what you say and I say. But I can only give the best of what I think I know, and all I can promise is that I'm just doing it from the best of the knowledge and from the heart that I can. That's all I can do.
Absolutely,
but
mate.
we'll
I
always
think you
have
do
different
a
opinions.
fantastic job, mate. And I'd say now we don't always agree with the way rounds have gone when we're doing fight analysis.
Yeah,
And stuff.
sure, but that's
There's
that's
been,
the good thing, you get the fan's perspective, which is yourself. You're a real fan of it. You're not uneducated completely in it. You do know what you're about of sorts. You know what when someone's got an arm around the neck, it's a choke, and
yeah,
you understand that the chin needs to be high to be able to get the choke in, and etc. But of course, yeah, when we were watching a complete fight, you might see it that one person's won it because it looked more aggressive, and then I might have to point out, well, yeah, it was aggressive, but only for 1.5 minutes of the round. He was actually losing mildly for the 3.5 minutes of the other portion of the round. So I don't think he won that. So of course, that's all horses for courses. I'm sure there's some other professional fighters that may have agreed with you more than they would have me, but that's the way it goes. Probably why the judging so equity pickledy, because we do have all these differing opinions of what we see.
absolutely. What's your full like list of like don't know what the word is, like expertise or whatever, like black belts and jiu-jitsu
Okay.
or judo and
Okay. I mean, this isn't in order because it's many years ago now, but I got black belt in taekwondo, Shinsen Jutsu, which was under Lee Asdal, which is like an MMA system, Spirit Combat Jiu-Jitsu, which was the traditional jiu-jitsu I was talking about, obviously Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and like kickboxing, Thai boxing, and then my own system, which obviously I got a black belt in because it's my own system, which we've initially called it MMA DNA. So we created our own sort of like a syllabus system to get to a black belt in that.
oh, cool.
So what's that, five or six?
Yeah.
But black belts don't really, they do, I don't want to say they don't mean nothing to me, because of course they do, but you can have someone that's a black belt and you can have someone that's a lot less a belt defeat that person in a real fight scenario. It doesn't actually, you're only as good as you truly really are, and not that the fact that there is a belt around your waist. But that said, obviously I am proud of my achievements, but I also know that just because I've got 5 or 6 black belts, it doesn't mean someone with 1 black belt can't defeat me in a real fight, because they might be 20 years younger, 20 kilos heavier, etc. That has to be put into account
there's
too.
so many aspects to a fight, isn't there? And and that's what makes MMA so special, is that it's and you see it, I think, in many ways you see it more in these old tournaments where it's martial art versus martial art in many ways, more so than you see perhaps in the current stuff, which is it is still MMA, but it's an overall sport rather than back then it was very much karate, and they marketed it as such as well, wasn't it? So like that fight we were just saying then, it was karate versus karate, and all these different aspects, different horses for courses, I guess. Anyway, we digress. I took us off on a tangent there, as I often do. I take us all over the place. So the final, ROYCE Gracie versus Patrick Smith. ROYCE Gracie won via submission punches. After 117.
Yeah.
Wow, punches from the Gracie.
Yeah. Punches, but not from the feet. Let's not get any delusions about what happened in the fight. Gracie was still doing what Gracie should do. I think he was saving his fists for the final. I think that's why you didn't see him throw that many strikes to the head in the preliminary rounds. I think he was saving it all for the final. He engaged very quickly with Patrick Smith, but when I was saying you can definitely see a bit of evolution there. Rather than get bowled down straight to his back, he's got some awareness of keeping his base and did fight the takedown attempt. And you got to remember, Royce ain't no great wrestler, but he still will have lots of tricks to his game to get it into his arena. Did eventually get it down. Yeah. Sorry.
I was just going to say, when he very first took him down, straight away Patrick Smith locked up ROYCE Gracie's leg with his legs.
Yes,
which
a
I
half
found
guard,
really, really interesting. That he had that know-how to do that straight away to try and reduce the chances of he didn't just give ROYCE free reign of his body. Whereas in UFC One, every time ROYCE Gracie went to the floor, he just basically had a free run at every fighter's body. Whereas this time, it only took a minute, but he had to work for it a bit harder.
Yeah,
so you can tell
there was something in Patrick's game, wasn't there? You could tell there was something in his game previous, 6 months before, but it was only 6 months of prep that he could put for the ground, and ain't going to match no black belt on the ground. Royce got what he wanted. He went from the half guard into the mount in quick succession. Landed a few punches, and Patrick Smith wanted none of it. I think he just knew, and he was really respectful. He held Royce's arm aloft. And like you say, Patrick Smith went on and had quite a full career in MMA. And just sad to hear that he had died. I mean, that's pretty sad.
It is, yeah. So next week we'll be moving on to UFC 3. So I've just pulled that up just to have a look, and it's the first. I will spoil a little bit of it for people. It's the first one that ROYCE Gracie is not in the final.
Yeah.
Which and it's not because of what you might think in terms of.
No, I remember this because this was the next video I got out of that video shop. Once I saw that, and I saw the UFC 3, I was like, hey, let's get this one out.
So as is tradition from last week, I'm going to tell us who's in it, tell us their martial art, and you can tell us a bit about what the martial art is. So we've got Keith Hackney, who is American Kenpo.
Yeah, American Kenpo. So that's a little bit like a mix of both Kung Fu style with your arms, if you will, and karate with the kicks. So it's kind of a mixed blend.
Okay. And then he faces off against Emmanuel Yarbrough, who's a sumo wrestler, which is obviously, we know that.
Yeah, self-explanatory.
Ken Shamrock is a shoot fighter. We're familiar with Ken. Christopher Lalinga is a judoka. Harold Howard, who is something which I cannot pronounce. Some style of karate. So when I look at that, it says hard soft style. I can't pronounce it though. It's Goju Roy, maybe. I don't know.
Probably maybe Goju karate.
Yeah, that's the Goju.
Yeah, it's like a full contact karate style, almost like a full contact kickboxing style with that a traditional element to it.
Okay.
So not like not a kickboxer in the complete sense like this. But they would throw punching kicks. They would just have a different stance.
Okay. And then you have Roland Payne. He's a Muay Thai fighter. Obviously Muay Thai we were familiar with. Royce,
and very appropriate name as well, Roland Payne.
Yeah.
Nice fight name.
It is a good one, that, isn't it? ROYCE Gracie and Kimo Leopoldo. I apologize. Who's Taekwondo. So nothing. I don't know where I missed that one. Felix Mitchell seems to have appeared from nowhere. He must be a substitute.
Was he?
Who is Shaoling Quan? Okay. I might not be pronouncing that right, but it appears to be Shaolin Kung Fu.
Oh, okay.
But the word that they've used for it, I can't pronounce. Shaolin Quan.
Right.
But it's some form of Kung Fu. And we also have a sub, Steve Jenham, who is an ninjutsu.
That's right. Yeah. I remember him, Steve Jenham.
But I'm not gonna go into any other detail and spoil the
save that.
So people go watch UFC 3 this week. And what did we do for time? So we did 1.5 hours. Okay. So next week, myself and Danny were planning on watching the ROYCE Gracie versus Sakuraba fight from Pride 2000 as a follow-up to the Royler Gracie fight, which we obviously watched this week. But someone also sent in a suggestion that we do. I forgot what it was. Joe Calzaghe versus Roy Jones Jr. So I don't like the shows to go over sort of 1 hour 45 to 2 hours. I prefer them to sort of stay under that. But we've done this in an hour and a half, and we could have done it in maybe 10 minutes shorter if we need to as well. So I think we'll do both fights. We'll see how it goes. If it goes too long, then in future we'll keep it to the UFC event plus one fight. Just checking if the full fight is available on YouTube. If it's not, then we'll have to use the kind of the write-ups and the full highlights, my friend. But so they will be the fights if people. Yeah, you can be able to find them somewhere. So for people who are looking, this on YouTube, full fight.
Yeah.
So yes, so people who are going to watch the events and then watch the podcast or listen to the podcast, it's Joe Calzaghe Jr. from 2000. Joe Calzaghe versus Roy Jones Jr. from the 8th of November 2008. The full fight's available on YouTube. And UFC 3 plus ROYCE Gracie versus Sakuraba from Pride 2000. And just make sure you watch the ROYCE Gracie, not the Royler Gracie fight. And we will break them all down next week. Just to finish off, Danny, we had one question sent in from someone today. They said, with Jack Shaw and Nathaniel Wood going back and forth on Twitter, do you think that we'll see this fight in the UFC? Should the UFC make the fight? And if they do, who would win and why?
I do think the fight should go ahead. I think that would be a really good one. I would like to see that. And I already know which direction you're going because we discussed this off air before. So I would say I'm going to, and I love both fighters, and it really is hard to say who would win in all honesty. But I would go Nathaniel Wood quite simply because I think he is going to have a little bit more experience now after having the defeat that he had as well. I think he's an intelligent, adaptive fighter, and I think it will just make him a little bit more seasoned than Jack Shaw. A little bit more experience.
Okay. I disagree. I think that Jack Shaw will win. I think Jack Shaw has got just an all-round game that I think Nathaniel Wood would struggle to deal with. Whilst Nathaniel Wood is an exceptional fighter, I just think Jack Shaw is too good in terms of his striking is excellent, his grappling is excellent, his wrestling is good. Everything is top-notch. And there's a reason why Dana White singled him out when he signed as the next the next big thing from the UK for the UFC. He doesn't do that for every fighter. He didn't do that for say Brett Johns or someone else. I'll just use Brett as an example. But what I mean is when they sign fighters from the UFC from the UK, they don't necessarily come out and say they're the next big thing, etc. etc. There is a reason for that. Jack is not just hype.
Yeah, no, they're both absolutely capable of beating each other. They've just got to get their game going the right direction to win it, and that's going to be the battle, right? I hope that fight happens. I think that'd be great. I think that'll create a lot of interest, especially with what's been happening with a little bit of talking going on. It gives you a little bit of backstory to it. So there's always a nice little twist to add into a fight.
Oh yes, and that's what you want is a nice bit of edge. And I don't mean that in any way disrespectful to Nathaniel. Nathaniel Wood's an excellent fighter. Obviously I know Jack, which doesn't play into my decision whatsoever. But
I mean they're both great fighters.
There's a reason why both fighters are so highly rated. I think if they do for everything I've heard from people who I know and everything I've read, they want to put the UFC London card back on the second they as soon as they are able to put it on, they want to put it back on, which this would be an exceptional, even if you didn't want to put it as like a co-main event or something like that, just a middle of the card, absolute banger. I think this would be, superb.
Absolutely.
And I think UFC London would be the perfect place.
And we need something exciting in the pipeline because the Khabib fight is off, isn't it?
Yeah, it was always going to happen.
I mean,
Khabib and Ferguson, it's never going to happen, mate. Never going to happen.
I mean, is that the 5th time or something, isn't it? Is that fifth
or sixth?
I mean, wow, this is ridiculous. I mean, how can something
global
always
virus
get in the way? Yeah.
Look, I got to say, I thought I had already in my head. It was already off to me because as soon as they started saying about moving it to different countries and all this sort of stuff, number one,
grabbing at straws.
Well, number one is Khabib has proven over the years that he's not necessarily the easiest to deal with in terms of moving fights, organizing fights. And you're telling me that you've got to try and rearrange this fight to a different country, but you don't know which country yet. And then when you factor in the travel bans and all this sort of thing, it's never going to happen. I personally not entirely convinced that Khabib will ever fight again. I think he's got one eye on retirement, and I think that's a dangerous game. If you've got fighters, I think Daniel Cormier suffered with that a little bit in the John Jones, the second fight. He had in his head, he had said publicly, "I want to fight Stipe, I want to fight Jones, I want to fight one more, and then I want to retire." And I kind of just to me, and I'm not a fighter, I think that's a dangerous game. And I think Khabib is the same. He's sort of got one eye on retirement. And I don't think so too. I don't think he's got I don't think he's desperate to fight Tony Ferguson in any way.
No, I kind of get the feeling too. We could be completely wrong, but I sometimes wonder whether we'll ever see him fight again.
I also think that Tony Ferguson will beat him. I also think that the one fight we might see is Conor McGregor rematch, just because he does not like Conor McGregor. And I think that motivation might be the difference between retiring and one more. Yeah. And it's also, it's going to be the biggest selling fight in history. That helps.
Yeah. And I do think we'd see a better prepared Conor McGregor as well.
Oh yeah,
because he had a long time out from the MMA training.
Yes,
he's obviously been training boxing, and it had been a long time for him out the cage.
I watched the Cerrone fight again the other day, and I know it was only like a minute long or something, but he looked like Conor McGregor from years ago, who fought Aldo and Alvarez and all the Chad Mendes and all these guys who he systematically took apart, whether on the microphone before the fight and then in the octagon, just with his angles and his striking.
He seems to have the death touch. That's the only way I can describe it. He just seems to always find people's off switch.
Yeah. He's got the angles he creates, I think, is one of the strongest parts of his game. He creates weird angles to everyone else. And it's like he's got lead in his gloves and his feet. He just when he touches people with that left hand, it does damage, if not finishes them.
Yeah. I think it's very, very precise.
Shoulder as well now as well.
Yeah. Yeah, he's getting more and more creative. He's adding more tools to his game, more weapons.
I just want to see, even if Khabib beats him again, I want to see that Conor McGregor versus Khabib, because I want to know. Because I said straight after the Khabib fight, I said that Conor was so worried about, or in his head, and even John Kavanagh said since, they were so worried, they were so focused on Khabib and what he could do, that they didn't do the normal things that they would do.
Right.
Like Conor McGregor's done all his career, creating those angles and counter shots, and he never got going. So I'd love to see it. Love to see it. Whether we will, I'd also like to see Khabib, Ferguson versus McGregor. I'd also like to see Gaethje versus McGregor. I think it could be an absolute.
All of them exciting matchups.
Gaethje versus Ferguson. Oof.
Oh, I mean that's like a dream. That's like a dream as well. Yeah.
I had a dream the other night that Tony Ferguson fought Max Holloway.
Okay. Ooh.
That would be
if that happens now, that'd be a bit odd.
Yeah, it was weird. Just a random dream, but like, I think that could be, an absolute banger. I really wish Holloway hadn't gone up a weight, because he lost, didn't he, when he went up a weight?
He did, yeah.
Who did he fight?
Was it Poirier?
Mine's gone blank. Yeah, I think so.
It's Poirier, wasn't it? Yeah.
I think so, yeah. I wish he hadn't gone up a weight to try and. I think did he go up a weight?
He was feeling. I think he was.
Thing?
Yeah, I just think he was feeling unstoppable. He was looking so convincing all the time as a featherweight, and I think he just felt so confident to go up a weight. And,
he lost. So he lost to Dustin Poirier, I think.
Yeah.
No, he lost his belt to Volkanovski.
Yeah, that's his featherweight belt. But when he went up a weight, he fought Poirier.
Oh, right, yeah, okay, and that's right. Yeah, he went up and fought. He fought. So he beat Brian Ortega in that bloodbath, where he's got the record for the most amount of strikes in 4 rounds. The next fight down of all time is like more than 40 strikes, and that was over 5 rounds, and that was him as well. So just from the output, then he lost. He went up a weight and fought Poirier, lost, and I think that's the one that kind of, because before that he looked unbeatable before that. Then he beat Frankie Edgar, which I don't.
He's on his way out a little bit.
I don't want to be disrespectful to Frankie, but he's not what he was. And then he lost going up his featherweight belt to Volkanovski. Whereas I feel like if you take that Poirier fight out of there, is that what caused him to maybe lose a bit of that?
Could have been.
Invincibility.
It's hard to really know. I mean, Holloway's still real young, so.
Yeah, before that though, he was looking. They would look like they were starting to set up the Conor McGregor rematch, because he looked, Holloway had looked so invincible, and he'd beaten Ortega. It was like, here we go.
I mean, what I would like to see, because McGregor's sort of coming back and getting his groove, seeing him fight Holloway would be really quite good. I mean, it'd have to be done at lightweight. I don't think Conor McGregor has got it in him to featherweight anymore. No, but that would certainly be a good fight. It would really re-establish Holloway at that weight again.
Holloway's only 28.
But if Conor McGregor beats Holloway for the second time at another weight,
could do
it just consolidates. Consolidates McGregor even more so.
But if McGregor was to beat Holloway, at lightweight or whatever, and he beat him convincingly in like a first round victory, does that do more damage to Holloway than a victory over McGregor would do him good? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it really it'll put out the spark that's barely come aflame for McGregor to then lose again. I think it would be devastating for Conor McGregor's return.
Yeah, because he beat Holloway, years ago, wasn't it? It was at the start of his UFC.
He was taking Holloway down, and he totally
beat
dominated
him decision, didn't he, in 2013?
Yeah. But I don't think he'd be able to. I think he's still capable of beating Holloway, but not so convincingly as he did. But can Holloway perform as good as we know that he can up at that weight? It might be that lightweight division just ain't for him. So that maybe it just won't suit him.
Yeah, it's difficult to say, isn't it? Without,
yeah,
but he didn't look what he had been when he went up to lightweight.
But I don't think we can take anything away from Holloway or Volkanovski. Volkanovski absolutely nailed the strategy for someone with a short body composition like he did to hit the legs in the flurries and kick at the legs and come out. Obviously, he's a really fit guy as well. It was an excellent performance and an excellent fight as well. So, yeah, I mean, there's just so many elite, amazing fighters. I think it'd be hard for them to guarantee to win time and time again. That's why kind of you got to take your hats off to Khabib, stand unbeaten amongst the pool of fighters that are in these weight divisions now. I mean,
yes,
it's an absolute pit of lions, it really is.
Oh yeah, there's like killers everywhere, and there's just an exceptional talent.
Yeah.
The other thing I was interested in, I don't know if you'd be interested in doing. I'll speak to you actually when we finish. About that. So, guys, thank you for tuning in and joining us. Join us next week for UFC number 3, and we'll also be talking Joe Calzaghe versus Roy Jones Jr. and ROYCE Gracie versus Sakuraba from Pride 2000. It's going to be a lot of fun. You can send your questions in to all the usual places. We got at ACEcast_nation on Twitter and Instagram, or facebook.com/ACEcastNation, or just leave the comments in the box below this video, and you can find all the audio versions of all our shows and the usual places: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, that sort of thing. Thank you for joining us, Danny. Thank you for joining me. It's a pleasure as always.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. Thank you for listeners to tap in and listen again.
And we'll see you next Wednesday for another show. Cheers, guys.
Yeah.
Defending champion, welcome, Danny